The Galactic Federation had existed for over 1,000 star cycles, a union of 218 advanced species spanning the void. Their values were rooted in peace, consensus, and shared prosperity, because war, they had discovered, was a relic of evolution. Predators rarely survived the test of civilization. Herbivores ruled the stars, their collective wisdom shaping a universe free of violence. That was until humans arrived. Their ships were crude by Federation standards, barely capable of breaching warp space. But when the survey fleet Amara stumbled upon the Sol system, they found a world that defied everything they thought they knew. The humans didn't just survive on their death world, they thrived. Their environment was lethal, teeming with predators armed with claws, venom, and unimaginable cunning. And humans weren't at the bottom of that food chain. They were at the very top. "Explain this to me again," High Arbiter Lotharic rumbled, her 6 eyes narrowing at the hologram projected before her. She was one of the Bracton, an amphibious species known for their wisdom and prudence. The hologram showed a human, a lean, bipedal creature with sharp eyes and an expression of unsettling intensity. "They are omnivores, yes," the xenoanthropologist replied nervously, his feathers twitching. "But their evolutionary path is unique. Unlike most sapients, they are apex predators on their homeworld. They hunted for millions of years before developing agriculture. Their brains are wired for pursuit, persistence, and, most disturbingly, conflict." Conflict. Lotharic's voice dripped with disdain. "War, Arbiter. Humans are the only species we've encountered that perfected the art of killing each other as a mechanism for social development. It appears to have accelerated their technological progress." The chamber fell silent. The thought was repugnant to every species present. War wasn't progress, it was regression. "And yet," Lotharic said, her voice low, "they survived." "Not just survived," another voice interrupted. "It belonged to Admiral Krenthak of the Varl, a reptilian race whose military prowess was unmatched in the Federation. They dominate. Their species is young, barely 200,000 cycles, and already they are on the cusp of galactic travel. They've split the atom, harnessed fusion, and mapped their genome, all while waging wars against each other." "Barbarians," hissed one of the council members, a slender insectoid. Krenthak hissed back, his eyes narrowing. "Barbarian or not, they are a threat. If we allow them into the Federation, we risk inviting chaos." The debate raged for hours, but it was ultimately decided. Humanity would be monitored, not contacted. Their potential for violence made them too dangerous for integration. Decades passed. Humanity's influence expanded. Their first colony ships breached Federation borders, and their diplomats began knocking on the doors of galactic powers. The Federation's refusal to acknowledge them didn't go unnoticed. Humanity grew bolder, probing the boundaries of the galactic community. And then came the incident. A Federation cargo vessel, the Thalvanar, vanished near the human colony of Epsilon Theta. Its wreckage was discovered days later, its hull breached by kinetic weapons, primitive but effective. 43 Federation citizens were dead. The Federation accused humanity. Humanity denied involvement. A human delegation was finally summoned to the Hall of Unity, the Federation's seat of power. The chamber was vast, designed to humble even the most arrogant species. But the humans, led by Ambassador Rachel Carter, seemed unimpressed. She stood at the center of the chamber, flanked by armed guards. Though diminutive compared to most species present, her presence was anything but small. "You accuse us of attacking your ship," she said, her voice cold and steady. "But you provide no evidence." "Evidence?" Lotharic rose from her seat, towering over Carter. "Your kind has a history of violence. You have no place in our galaxy." Carter's lips curled into a faint smile. "And yet here we are, thriving in a galaxy that, by your own admission, fears us. Tell me, Arbiter, if we are so barbaric, why haven't you stopped us?" The chamber erupted into murmurs. "Enough!" Krenthak growled, silencing the assembly. "This is not a trial. It is a warning. Humanity will cease its expansion beyond its current territories. Any violation will be met with force." Carter didn't flinch. "Force? Is that a threat?" "A promise." Her smile widened. "Good, because humans have a saying, promises are meant to be broken." In the months that followed, the Federation deployed fleets to human space, intending to blockade their colonies and halt their expansion. But humanity didn't fight back conventionally. They didn't need to. They hacked Federation systems, turning their own ships against them. They sabotaged. On the surface of Epsilon Theta, Governor Marcus Albright stood on the colony's central platform, staring up at the night sky. The blockade had been in place for weeks, and supplies were dwindling. Water rationing was already in effect, and power generators strained under the load. Beside him, a young communications officer ran up, breathless. "Governor, we've picked up a signal. Tight beam transmission from orbit." Marcus turned, hope flickering in his eyes. "Who?" "Humans, sir. It's the Endeavor. They're inbound with supplies." Marcus felt a surge of relief, but it was tempered by the knowledge that the Federation wouldn't stand idly by if the blockade was breached. "Alert the militia," he said. "If the Federation retaliates, we need to be ready." Far above, on the FNS Vigilant, Commander Drenlex studied the situation with growing unease. The Vigilant was the flagship of the Federation's blockade fleet, a vessel bristling with weaponry. But something wasn't right. "Commander, our long-range sensors are detecting anomalous readings," an officer reported. "What kind of readings?" "Hard to say. It looks like a freighter, but it's moving too erratically." Drenlex's eyes narrowed. "Scramble interceptors. I want visual confirmation." Moments later, sleek Federation fighters launched from the Vigilant, their engines burning blue streaks through the darkness. The Endeavor's sensors picked up the fighters long before they were visible. "Captain, we've got incoming," the tactical officer said. Hayes nodded, unshaken. "Initiate the contingency plan. Divert power to ECM and prep countermeasures." The Endeavor shimmered again, its stealth systems shifting into high gear. To the fighter's sensors, it seemed to split into dozens of identical signals, each one moving in a different direction. "Hostiles are disoriented," the tactical officer reported. "They're spreading out to chase phantoms." "Good, hold course." But the Federation pilots weren't amateurs. One of them, a veteran named Jorvek, recognized the trick. He ignored the decoys and followed a faint heat signature through the void. "There you are," he muttered, locking his weapons on the Endeavor. The first missile hit hard. The Endeavor's shields flared, absorbing most of the impact, but the ship rocked violently. "Shields at 60%, the tactical officer shouted. "Return fire," Hayes ordered. The Endeavor's rear turret swiveled, spitting molten slugs at the pursuing fighter. The rounds weren't advanced, they were primitive by Federation standards, but they were fast and devastating. Jorvek barely had time to evade. One slug grazed his wing and alarms blared in his cockpit. "Vigilant, this is Jorvek," he transmitted. "I've engaged the target. It's a human vessel, but..." The rest of his message was lost as a second slug found its mark, tearing through his engine. His fighter spiraled out of control, exploding in a flash of light. "Target neutralized," the tactical officer confirmed. Hayes didn't celebrate. She knew this was only the beginning. "Status of the supply drop. On schedule. Containers will be deployed in 10 minutes. Hayes nodded. "Good, prep the secondary payload." On the surface of Epsilon Theta, Marcus watched as supply pods streaked through the atmosphere, their parachutes deploying as they descended. Around him, colonists cheered. But Marcus didn't smile. His eyes were fixed on the sky, where distant flashes of light signaled the battle above. "Governor, the militia is ready," his second-in-command said. "Let's hope we don't need them," Marcus replied grimly. Back on the Vigilant, Commander Drenlex seethed. The loss of a fighter was unacceptable, especially to a human ship. "Deploy the drones," he barked. "I want that vessel destroyed." Federation drones were small, fast, and deadly, designed to swarm targets and overwhelm them. A dozen launched from the Vigilant, streaking toward the Endeavor like a cloud of angry hornets. Inside the Endeavor, alarms blared as the drones closed in. "Captain, we've got a swarm inbound," Hayes clenched her jaw. "Activate the secondary payload, now." The tactical officer hit a series of commands. The Endeavor ejected a small device into space. The device detonated, releasing a cloud of microfragments and electronic interference. The drones, unable to process the sudden influx of data, spiraled out of control and collided with one another in a cascade of explosions. The bridge erupted in cheers, but Hayes raised a hand, silencing them. "We're not out of this yet. Plot an emergency warp trajectory and get us out of here." Minutes later, the Endeavor disappeared into warp space, leaving behind a crippled blockade and a colony renewed with hope. But the Federation wouldn't forget this humiliation, and humanity wouldn't stop pushing the boundaries of their resilience, adaptability, and cunning. For humans, the hunt was only just beginning. The Federation Council convened in a state of controlled panic, News of the Endeavor's success at Epsilon Theta had spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Despite their superior technology and overwhelming numbers, the Federation had been outmaneuvered by a single human vessel. In the Hall of Unity, High Arbiter Lotharek stared down at the gathered representatives. The chamber buzzed with murmurs, accusations, and fears until her voice cut through like a blade. Enough! The room fell silent. We have underestimated these humans, she began. Their actions are not just acts of defiance, they are declarations of war. If we do not act decisively, they will continue to erode the Federation's authority. We must make an example of them. Krenthak, the Varl Admiral, leaned forward, his scaled face twisted into a grin. You should have let me deal with them from the beginning. Their colony worlds are vulnerable. If we strike swiftly, we can crush them before they gain more ground. And risk another embarrassment like Epsilon Theta? Lotharek's 6 eyes narrowed. No, this time, we will not rely on brute force. Humans thrive on chaos, on exploiting our rigid systems. We must adapt. What are you proposing, Arbiter? Asked one of the insectoid representatives, their mandibles clicking in unease. We isolate them completely, cut off their trade routes, sabotage their infrastructure, and turn their allies against them. If they wish to behave like predators, then we will treat them as such, by starving them out. The Council erupted in agreement. For the first time since the incident, the Federation had a unified plan. On the surface, on Earth. In a secure bunker deep beneath the United Nations building, the leaders of humanity's major factions gathered. The room was dimly lit, its walls lined with holographic displays. These displays showed the latest intelligence from across the galaxy. Ambassador Rachel Carter stood at the head of the table. Beside her was General Elias Ward, commander of Earth's fledgling Space Defense Force. Our mission to Epsilon Theta was a success, Carter began, but the Federation's response has been swift. They've deployed additional fleets to our borders and are pressuring our trade partners to cut ties. They're trying to starve us, Ward said bluntly. It's a classic siege tactic, and it'll work if we don't act quickly. President Aisha Patel, leader of the United Earth Coalition, frowned. How long can we hold out? Ward pulled up a hologram of Earth's supply lines. Red markers showed the growing number of blockades and disruptions. We have enough reserves to sustain our core worlds for a year, maybe 2. But our colonies will suffer. They're already dependent on supply shipments, and if the Federation tightens its grip, we could see widespread famine and unrest. We can't afford to lose the colonies, Patel said. They're the backbone of our expansion efforts. Carter stepped forward, her expression hard. Then we hit back, not with brute force. We don't have the numbers for that. But if the Federation wants to isolate us, we make them pay for it. We hit their supply lines, sabotage their fleets, and turn their allies against them. Ward raised an eyebrow. You're proposing guerrilla warfare on a galactic scale? Carter nodded. Exactly. We can't beat them head on, but we don't need to. Humans are survivors. We've thrived on adversity, and now we'll make them regret underestimating us. The Federation's supply convoy moved through the Valtrex Expanse, a dense region of space where warp travel was limited. The convoy consisted of 10 cargo vessels, each carrying critical resources. These resources were for Federation fleets stationed near human territories. Unbeknownst to the convoy, they were being hunted. The Havoc, a human stealth corvette, drifted silently through the expanse. Its captain, Rajesh Kumar, watched the convoy on his tactical display, a wolfish grin spreading across his face. They have no idea we're here, his tactical officer said. Good, Kumar replied. Deploy the drones. The Havoc wasn't designed for direct combat. Instead, it carried a payload of autonomous attack drones, small, fast, and armed with high-yield explosives. The drones launched silently, darting toward the convoy like a swarm of wasps. By the time the Federation ships detected them, it was too late. Explosions rippled through the convoy as one cargo vessel after another was destroyed. The Havoc didn't stick around to celebrate. It vanished into the expanse, leaving only wreckage and confusion. The sabotage of the convoy sent shockwaves through the Federation. Supplies meant for critical fleets were gone, and worse, whispers of dissent began to spread among the member species. On the planet Altheron, home to the resource-rich Vinar, a group of Federation officials gathered in secret. The humans are reckless, one said, his voice trembling, but they've exposed the Federation's weaknesses. If they can strike so effectively, what's stopping others from doing the same? The Federation has grown bloated and complacent, another agreed. Perhaps it's time we reevaluate our alliances. Such conversations were becoming more common. The Federation's rigid hierarchy, once its greatest strength, was now a liability. On the Federation capital world of Auraxis, Lotharic reviewed the latest reports with growing frustration. Despite their best efforts, humanity was proving impossible to contain. They adapt too quickly, Krenthak admitted reluctantly. Every tactic we use, they counter within days. It's as if they're learning from us. They are, Lotharic said grimly. And if we do not change our approach, they will tear the Federation apart. What do you suggest? Lotharic hesitated. Perhaps it is time we consider negotiation. Krenthak recoiled. Negotiate with predators? They will see it as weakness, perhaps Lotharic said. But predators also respect strength, and if we continue down this path, we may find ourselves hunted. Back on Earth, Carter stood before the United Earth Council, a new plan taking shape. The Federation is cracking, she said. We've sown the seeds of doubt, and now it's time to exploit them. If we can turn enough of their member species against them, we can force the Federation to the negotiating table. And if they refuse? Ward asked. Carter's gaze hardened. Then, we remind them why humans became the apex predators of Earth. The room fell silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy in the air. Humanity had survived ice ages, wars, and extinction-level threats. Now, they would survive the galaxy itself. The hunt was far from over. The first cracks in the Federation's unity appeared on the industrial world of Chrysal 4, home to the Lorvan, a hardy insectoid species with an economy built on mining and manufacturing. The Lorvan had long grown weary of the Federation's rigid control. Their leader, Primarch Kavos, paced within the council chamber of the Hive Citadel, flanked by his advisors. The air buzzed with tension, punctuated by the rhythmic clicking of mandibles. They promised protection, Kavos hissed. But all they bring us are shortages and war. The blockade against the humans disrupts trade across the sector. And who bears the cost? The Lorvan, as always. One of his advisors stepped forward cautiously. The Federation demands loyalty, Primarch. To defy them could bring consequences. Kavos turned sharply, his multifaceted eyes gleaming. And what have they given us in return for our loyalty? Promises of peace? Look at the humans. They defy the Federation and thrive. Perhaps it is time we consider alternatives. The room grew quiet, but the seed was planted. On board the SS Vanguard, humanity's newest diplomatic vessel, Rachel Carter prepared for a mission unlike any she had undertaken before. Her destination was Chrysal 4, a system deemed off-limits by the Federation. Are you sure about this? General Ward's voice crackled over the comm. If the Federation catches wind of this, they'll label it an act of war. They already consider us at war, Carter replied, adjusting the cuffs of her suit. We can't fight the galaxy alone. The Lorvan are the key. If we can turn them, others will follow. And if they don't, Carter's gaze hardened. Then we'll find someone else who will. The Vanguard slipped into Lorvan space, broadcasting no official identification. Its sleek adaptive hull absorbed sensor pings, rendering it an indistinct blur. But the humans weren't here to hide forever. As the ship approached the Hive Citadel, Carter sent a single, encrypted transmission. We bring opportunity. Will you listen? Kavos met Carter in a dimly lit chamber deep within the Hive Citadel. The Lorvan leader towered over the human diplomat, his segmented limbs clicking softly as he moved. You are bold to come here, human, Kavos said, his voice a deep, resonant hum. Forgiveness doesn't concern us. Survival does. And from where I'm standing, the Federation isn't helping your survival either. On the Federation tilted his head, his antennae twitching. You come here with words, but words do not topple empires. Why should the Lorvan risk everything to side with you? Carter stepped closer, her tone low and measured. Because we're not asking you to fight for us. We're asking you to fight for yourselves. The Federation has kept you dependent and obedient for centuries. But you have power, resources they rely on to keep their fleets operational. Withhold that power and watch how quickly they falter. Kavos considered her words carefully. And in return, humanity will ensure the Federation never dominates you again. Trade, technology, mutual defense, you'll stand as equals, not under their boot. The room fell silent as Kavos studied her. Then, with a slow, deliberate gesture, he extended a limb. You are a dangerous species, human, but perhaps that is exactly what we need. Word of Lorvan descent reached the Federation High Council within days. Spy networks and informants reported unusual activity on Kressel 4, delayed shipments, reduced mining output, and whispers of rebellion. High Arbiter Lotharek summoned Krenthak and the other military leaders to an emergency session. "The Lorvan are testing our resolve," she said, her voice cold and sharp. "If we do not act, others will follow their example." "We should deploy a strike fleet," Krenthak growled. "Burn their hives to ash." "No," Lotharek snapped. "Violence will only confirm their fears. We will remind the Lorvan why they joined the Federation in the first place, deploy diplomatic envoys, offer incentives, resources, trade privileges, and if they still resist," her 6 eyes narrowed, "then we make an example of their leaders." As the Federation focused on the Lorvan uprising, humanity struck at the heart of their operations. On Araxis, the Federation capital world, a secret human infiltration team had been operating for months. They were Ghosts, an elite unit trained for deep cover missions. Their leader, Lieutenant Maya Voss, had spent weeks disguised as a technician in one of Araxis's primary data hubs. She moved through the facility with practiced ease, her cover identity perfect down to the falsified credentials in her datapad. Tonight was the culmination of their mission. In a hidden alcove, Voss activated a portable terminal, her fingers flying across the interface. The Ghosts had one objective: disrupt the Federation's central communications network. If successful, the Federation's ability to coordinate fleets across its vast territory would be crippled. "Charge set," one of her operatives whispered over the comm. "We're clear for detonation." "Hold," Voss replied. "We wait for the signal." The signal came moments later, a minor explosion in a nearby sector of the city. It was a distraction, designed to pull security forces away from the data hub. "Now," Voss ordered. The charges detonated in rapid succession, sending a cascade of electromagnetic pulses through the network. Data streams flickered and failed as servers overloaded, plunging Federation systems into chaos. Voss and her team disappeared into the shadows, leaving no trace of their presence. The simultaneous disruptions, the Lorvan rebellion, and the sabotage on Araxis pushed the Federation to the brink. Supply chains faltered, communication networks sputtered, and dissent spread like wildfire. On the fringes of Federation space, other species began to reconsider their loyalties. The Vynar, long resentful of the Federation's taxation policies, refused to send their ore shipments. The Thalkeen, a nomadic trading species, opened secret negotiations with human diplomats. Humanity's strategy was working, but the Federation wasn't defeated yet. In the shadows of the Hall of Unity, Lotharek met with Admiral Krenthak in secret. "We underestimated them," she admitted. "Their methods are insidious, but they cannot match us in sheer power." Krenthak's claws clicked against the table. "What do you propose?" "We lure them into the open, force them to commit to a large-scale engagement, one they cannot possibly win. Let them believe they've gained the upper hand, then crush them." "And if they refuse to take the bait?" Lotharek's eyes gleamed. "Then we give them no choice. We'll make them think they've already won." The trap was set, and humanity, ever the cunning predator, would soon find itself walking into it. Deep within Federation space, in the orbit of the gas giant Vorten 6, the Federation began assembling its largest fleet in centuries. Hundreds of ships, destroyers, cruisers, carriers, and a flagship the size of a small moon gathered under the command of Admiral Krenthak. The operation was a carefully laid trap designed to exploit humanity's growing boldness. Leaked intelligence from reliable sources hinted that the Federation's largest ore refinery, critical to fueling, its fleet, was located on Vorten 6's orbital platform. It was bait, dangled like a wounded prey before a hungry predator. The humans were watching. The SS Invictus, humanity's most advanced warship, drifted in the shadow of a barren moon. Its captain, Diana Rourke, sat at the head of the War Council in the ship's briefing room. Around her, hollow displays showed the gathered fleet at Vorten 6, the refinery pulsing with life like a beating heart. "We've verified the intelligence," said Lieutenant Commander Felix Morrow, the ship's intelligence officer. "The refinery is real, and it's massive. If we take it out, the Federation will lose nearly 30% of their fuel production capacity. It's a prime target." "Too prime," Rourke said, frowning. Her gray eyes swept the room. "This feels wrong." General Elias Ward, joining via HoloLink, leaned forward. "What are you thinking, Captain?" Rourke's fingers tapped the table as she considered. "They've been on the back foot for weeks. This is too convenient. A refinery this critical, in the open. They're trying to draw us in. They want us to attack, Morrow agreed. But what's the alternative? We ignore it and let them regroup? We're already stretched thin, and this is our chance to deal a critical blow. Rourke exhaled sharply, her mind racing. She couldn't deny the opportunity. But she wouldn't walk her people blindly into a trap. We'll hit the refinery, she said finally. But we do it on our terms. The Invictus transmitted orders across its fleet. A ragtag collection of stealth corvettes, retrofitted freighters, and a handful of destroyers salvaged from earlier conflicts. Humanity's forces were small but lethal, relying on tactics and adaptability to level the playing field. The plan was simple, a feint followed by a strike. A small task force would lure the Federation fleet away from Vorten 6, while the Invictus and its main group attacked the refinery. 3 human stealth corvettes emerged from warp on the edge of the Vorten 6 system, broadcasting a reckless, taunting message across all channels. "This is Captain Rajesh Kumar of the Havoc," the lead corvette declared. "We're here to deliver some fireworks. Come and get us." The Federation fleet responded instantly. Admiral Krenthak sneered as the reports came in. "Fools," he growled. "Send the outer patrols after them. Do not let them escape." A dozen destroyers broke formation, engines blazing as they pursued the human ships. The Havoc and its allies darted toward a nearby asteroid belt, luring the Federation vessels into a deadly game of cat and mouse. As the Federation patrol ships left their positions, the Invictus and the main human force emerged from warp on the far side of Vorten 6. "Refinery in sight," Morrow reported. The orbital platform loomed ahead, a sprawling structure of refineries, storage tanks, and docking ports. It was surrounded by automated defenses, turrets, and drone swarms, but the main Federation fleet was still positioned too far away to respond immediately. "Launch strike teams," Rourke ordered. Small assault craft deployed from the human fleet, weaving through the platform's defenses. Explosions lit up the structure as missiles struck critical systems. Tanks ruptured, spilling streams of glowing fuel into space. Fires erupted, the refinery slowly tearing itself apart. "Status?" Rourke demanded. "Significant damage," Morrow said. "Fuel reserves are detonating. Chain reaction in progress." Rourke nodded, but her gut told her it wasn't over yet. Back near the asteroid belt, the Federation destroyers pursuing the Havoc suddenly received new orders. "Break off and return to the main fleet," their commander barked. "It's a diversion." On board the Vigilant, Krenthak grinned as the second phase of his trap unfolded. Hidden behind Vorten 6's massive rings, an additional fleet of cloaked Federation warships decloaked and surged toward the Invictus and its strike force. "Did you really think we'd leave the refinery undefended?" Krenthak snarled, watching the holographic display. "All ships converge on their position. Destroy them." "New contacts," shouted the Invictus's sensor officer. "Dozens of ships closing fast." Rourke's stomach dropped as the Federation fleet surrounded them. Massive cruisers and swarms of fighters boxed them in, weapon systems locking onto their ships. "It's a trap," Morrow said grimly. "No kidding," Rourke replied. "All ships, defensive formation. Buy as much time as you can." The first salvos hit like thunder, Federation weapons tearing into the human fleet. Shields buckled, smaller vessels shattered, and chaos erupted across the battlefield. On board the Invictus, Rourke refused to panic. "Deploy countermeasures and signal the Havoc. We need backup." Turning the tide. On the far side of the system, Captain Kumar received the signal. "They sprung the trap," he muttered. "Time to ruin their day." All ships, full burn to the refinery. The Havoc and its corvettes reversed course, streaking back toward the battle. But they weren't alone. From a hidden position in the asteroid belt, a squadron of experimental human fighters launched their sleek, angular designs optimized for speed and lethality. These were the Valkyries, piloted by Earth's best. "Engage at will," Kumar ordered. The Valkyries tore into the Federation fleet, their advanced weaponry punching through shields and hulls with brutal efficiency. Caught between the Invictus's desperate resistance and the sudden arrival of reinforcements, the Federation's formation began to crumble. In the chaos, Rourke saw an opportunity. "Focus fire on their flagship," she ordered. The Invictus and its remaining ships unleashed a relentless barrage on Krenthak's vessel, overwhelming its defenses. A final, well-placed torpedo breached the flagship's core, and the massive ship exploded in a blinding flash of light. The remaining Federation ships faltered, their morale shattered. "They're retreating," Morrow reported. Let them, Rourke said, her voice hard. This isn't over. As the battlefield fell silent, the human fleet regrouped. The refinery was destroyed, and the Federation had suffered another humiliating defeat. But Rourke knew the cost. Dozens of ships lost, hundreds of lives sacrificed. Back on the Invictus bridge, she stared at the burning wreckage on the view screen. They're learning, she said softly. Next time, they'll be smarter. And so will we, Morrow replied. Rourke nodded. Humanity's fight for survival was far from over. But for now, they had proven once again why they were the galaxy's apex predators. The hunt continued. News of the human victory at Vorton 6 rippled across the galaxy, spreading faster than the Federation could control it. Rumors whispered of Federation fleets destroyed, of humans exploiting their weaknesses with surgical precision. For some, it was a glimmer of hope. For others, it was a harbinger of chaos. The Federation High Council convened in a rare emergency session within the Hall of Unity, its gilded chamber filled with the leaders of its member species. They sabotage our infrastructure, turn our allies against us, and now they dare strike at the heart of our supply chains. We underestimated them, admitted Overseer Chikta, a reptilian diplomat from the Vorshan Dominion. These predators are not just warriors, they are tacticians. They strike where it hurts most, then vanish before we can respond. They are parasites, snarled Admiral Krenthak's replacement, Admiral Trivox, a towering insectoid whose wings vibrated with agitation. We must exterminate them before their poison spreads further. And yet, interjected Primarch Kavas of the Lorvan, the Federation's might has failed to crush them. Perhaps it is not their tactics that are the problem, but our arrogance. Lotharic's gaze snapped to Kavas, her 6 eyes narrowing. Do you suggest we kneel to them, Primarch? Kavas tilted his head, his mandibles clicking in a mocking smile. No, Arbiter. I suggest we stop underestimating them. The humans have exploited the weaknesses in our unity. If we do not address those weaknesses, the next defeat will be our last. His words hung heavy in the chamber. In the shadows of the SS Invictus, the human leadership prepared for the next phase of their campaign. The ship's war room buzzed with activity as holograms displayed maps of Federation territories, troop movements, and resource hubs. Rachel Carter, humanity's lead diplomat, stood at the center, addressing a council of military and political leaders. Vorton 6 was a victory, she began, but it was a reactionary move. The Federation is adapting to our tactics. We need to stay ahead of them. And that means taking risks. General Ward crossed his arms, frowning. We're already stretched thin. If we spread ourselves any further, they'll pick us off piece by piece.